Maintaining your identity, regardless of where you reside, is important. But what are the implications on the homeland where you live and represent? I'm Addie Banks, and this is my report. In Pacifica, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities seek identity and independence. Mark Ramirez, USA Today, January 30th, 2023. As she grew up and carved out a life in Washington state, Mally Janelle remembers filling out forms and applications and having to identify herself as Asian, or at best, Asian Pacific Islander. The thing was, as a Samoan American, she wasn't Asian and certainly didn't feel that way. Asian Americans didn't consider her such, even though much of larger society considered her to be. Quote, "It really destroys who you are as your indigenous self," she said. Janelle is an Elder Services Director for the Pacific Islander Community Association of Washington in Federal Way. She says, "It's an honor to call myself Pasifika." The growing use of the term Pacifica reflects a push within the community to recognize Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders as distinct from Asian Americans, not only as an expression of identity, but as a means of addressing inequalities between the two populations. Lumping them together, advocates say, places Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders at a disadvantage, particularly when it comes to health and economic resources given to the community's small numbers and unique concerns. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden hosted a reception to celebrate Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the Rose Garden of the White House on May 17, 2022. This instead of just Asian American Month. According to the United States Department of Human and Health Services, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders comprise just 0.4% of the United States population, including about 355,000 in Hawaii. Well, where did the term originate? Pacifica, a transliteration of the word meaning Pacific, has its roots in New Zealand. There, government agencies created the term in the 1980s to describe growing communities of indigenous migrants representing the Pacific diaspora, places like Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, the Cook Islands, and other areas of Oceania. Quote, "For the purposes of census counting, Pacifica is a significant category of people in New Zealand, behind Europeans." Roland Hong, a professor of Asian Pacific Islander American studies at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. For so long, Pacific communities have been and continue to be framed by other people looking in, says Lana Lopesi, an assistant professor of Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies at the University of Oregon in Eugene. It's really important for specific diaspora communities in the United States to take control of their own representation, she says. The growing use of the term Pasifika is part of that. Why is the distinction important? Community members say that beyond being a statement of identity, Pasifika is a term of empowerment, differentiating Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders from Asian Americans, with whom they have often been lumped ever since the United States Census Bureau broadened the Asian American category to include Asian Pacific Islanders in the 1980s. The community has fallen under umbrella terms as Asian Pacific American and Asian American Pacific Islander. Such groupings, while initially designed to promote inclusivity, have instead produced disparities. A Chinese in Samoa stated, the amount of funding that goes to Asian American groups is small, and the amount that goes to Pacific Islanders is even smaller. A lot of groups receive funding that is supposed to go to both groups, but there's no Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander representation. Not to fault those groups, but it's because of those terms that the funding is uneven. It's an uphill battle. Chanel of the Pacific Islander Community Association of Washington said that before the organization launched 3 years ago, many of the community refrained from seeking necessary services because they felt uncomfortable going to Asian-focused agencies. They felt neglected, she said. A lot of people were being marginalized and not feeling able to find resources to strive and survive. When this organization opened, it was like a beacon of light for the diaspora of Pacific Islander people here. We were bombarded. Chanel said that for those like her who recognize the partnership that they share with Asian Americans, but at the same time seek a separate identity, embracing the term Pasifika is a powerful step towards shedding the damage of colonialism. Quote, here on the West Coast, it's where the land meets the sea, and the sea is us. When we look to the Pacific Ocean, that's home. That's where our ancestors navigated and windsurfed. So Pasifika is a wonderful way to embrace our identity. Identity, who we are, our normal, natural, and necessary to maintain our group culture. This lends understanding of all groups embracing a certain oneness, not just people of color or Asians or Black Americans, but related to their history, traditions, and culture. So how does that work for America and other multicultural countries? Our group needs this. Our group needs that. What are the set-asides for our group? How does this encourage discontent and charges of discrimination by those groups not getting set asides, who fail to know the history of the entitlement, who sue the government or the university because they're feeling shortchanged? Diversity, inclusion, equity are all buzz terms for American opportunity to be spread across the entire population. But I ask you, what of legacy and Indigenous status? Should new citizens get in front of legacy or foundational citizens? Should Indigenous be first at the table? What is fair? What causes resentments that turn into hate crimes? When it comes to resolving issues of group relations, these major elements of reality should not continue to be overlooked, minimized truths by just pointing to xenophobia as the reason for people's resistance, or telling people to get over the history of slavery already, or telling immigrants to just fix your own country when you're likely a descendant of an immigrant. All the very smart scholars, like those quoted in this and other articles, as specialists on ethnic group history and culture, need to also take responsibility for not just what is wonderful about multiculturalism, but also the normal, natural, and expected reactions and outcomes that they have experienced as foreigners. This in every country from the beginning of time. Finally, are you still Indigenous if you have left home and have immigrated elsewhere? Think about this. Should I demand repair or reparations in a country that my ancestors voluntarily came to, and especially when they came to the country with the knowledge of hostility against people like them? If we hope to solve the race and ethnic issues of today and yesterday, let's grow up and discuss reality.